Everyone knows about the size, beauty, and untimely fate of RMS Titanic, the most famous, or infamous ship and shipwreck of her time, and likely even to this day. Everyone has seen the pictures of the grand staircase or heard the stories about the band playing until the very end. In this video, we are going to look at some of the lesser-known details, pictures, and stories behind Titanic that typically are not discussed in films or mainstream media. Beginning with the construction, Lord Peary, chairman of Harland & Wolff, and Bruce Ismay, chairman and managing director of the White Star Line, regularly inspected Titanic while she was under construction. Peary was actually the uncle of Titanic's designer Thomas Andrews, who will be discussed in more detail later in the video. Harland & Wolff was the shipbuilder, while White Star Line was the owner and operator. Ismay was later criticized for surviving the Titanic disaster, and he was portrayed as a buffoon in James Cameron's 1997 drama describing the sinking. Titanic's launch was on May 31, 1911. Hydraulic rams were used for the launch to help move the Titan from the dry dock into the harbor. They were positioned at the head of the slipway. Several tons of lubricant were used on the slipways to ensure a smooth transition into the water. During her construction, almost 250 people were injured and 8 people died. A worker was also crushed to death by a wooden support beam during the launch. Approximately 100,000 people attended the launch. This is a shipyard worker's launch ticket which was issued to a Harland & Wolff painter who worked on Titanic's first-class accommodations. Even though Titanic was launched, the ship was essentially still just a hull. Despite being the largest ship in the world, she still had issues with smaller ships sailing by her while moored in the harbor. Here is a letter from Harland & Wolff to Belfast Harbour Master, requesting he enforce safety protocols in regard to ships passing Titanic, especially at high speeds. In the upcoming months, Titanic was fitted out at Harland & Wolff. In March 1912, her sister Olympic had to be repaired after a collision with the HMS Hawke, which delayed Titanic's fitting process and hence moved her maiden voyage from March 20th to April 10th. While still in Belfast, Titanic was commanded by Captain Herbert Haddock. Captain Edward Smith took over command in Southampton. Third-class tickets ranged greatly from about $15 to $40. Second-class tickets were around $60, and first-class tickets ranged from approximately $150 for cabins to $4,350 for suites. Among Titanic's passengers were famous people like Isidor Straus, the owner of Macy's department stores and also a U.S. congressman. John Jacob Astor, an American business magnate and the richest man on the ship, was also on board for the maiden voyage. Titanic's lead designer and Harland & Wolff Guarantee Group leader Thomas Andrews was also on board. He assisted the crew in assessing the iceberg damage during the sinking and aided in the lifeboat loading process. All 3 perished in the sinking. First-class amenities on Titanic were significantly nicer than most ships of the time. These included a pool, gymnasium, squash court, and several high-end restaurants. One of them was the Café Parisien, a French-themed eatery. It served high-end 3-course meals, including oysters, salmon, sirloin of beef, foie gras, roast duckling, peaches and chartreuse jelly, and chocolate and vanilla eclairs. It also served alcohol and was located on the starboard side of B deck, and the vertical sliding windows could provide fresh air and a view of the sea. Titanic had its own spa area, which included a swimming pool, an electric bath which was essentially an early version of a tanning bed, and a Turkish bath. For a small fee, the Turkish bath provided passengers with relaxation in a cooling room, steam room, hot room, temperate room, and shampooing room. Even after over 110 years in the water, this area of the ship is still in relatively good condition and the tiling of the wall is still easily recognizable. The swimming pool used heated seawater. The entire spa area had assigned hours for men and women, as it was not allowed for them to use the facilities simultaneously. The same applied to the first-class gymnasium. An electric horse, camel, rowing machine, and cycling machines were part of the equipment. Thomas Macaulay was the physical educator who oversaw the gym. He died in the sinking. Despite the beauty of the majority of the newly completed Titanic, some of it remained crudely unfinished. Survivors made claims that the heating system didn't function in dozens of second-class passenger cabins at all, while other cabins seemingly received an unbearable amount of heat to the point where it had to be shut off entirely. Others complained about a fresh paint smell, prompting them to open the windows in their cabins. Open windows combined with early April weather in the North Atlantic, with no heat available, certainly would not make for an enjoyable experience. While first-class passengers obviously received the best treatment, the 700 passengers in third class had to share 2 bathtubs. Still, compared to other ships of the time, Titanic's third class was relatively upscale, as many passenger cabins had their own sinks. Even at home, the average third-class passenger would probably bathe in cold water with a sponge or by filling a tub with buckets of water. Titanic's first and second-class dining rooms could each accommodate over 500 people. However, the third-class dining room could not accommodate even 500 people, which wasn't enough to seat all of Titanic's 700 third-class passengers simultaneously. There were approximately 12,000 bottles of beer on Titanic. While third-class passengers only had access to beer and soft drinks, first-class passengers could also enjoy various liquors and wine. The menus show what was served for dinner on the night of April 14, 1912. It is likely that these were the final meals for 1,496 people. The day before the sinking, the Marconi wireless communication equipment, which was used to send and receive telegrams, broke down. It was repaired by senior Marconi operator Jack Phillips, which was against Marconi company policy. After the collision, he and junior operator Harold Bride sent distress telegrams to other ships in the area until the Marconi room started to flood. This particular telegram was received by the SS Burma, which was approximately 100 miles southwest of Titanic, too far away to arrive in time. This is one of the last photographs of Captain Smith. It's very possible that he died in this uniform. Out of Titanic's 7 officers, only 4 survived the sinking. All senior officers perished except for Second Officer Charles Lightoller. He was the very last survivor to be rescued by RMS Carpathia. Titanic struck the iceberg at 11:40 p.m. and disappeared underneath the waves at 2:20 a.m. Several pictures were taken of the rescue efforts and survivors on board of Carpathia. Not everyone who made it into or onto a lifeboat survived the night after being in the water, and a few were buried at sea. The first lifeboat to be rescued was Lifeboat 2, at 4:15 a.m. The final lifeboat was rescued at 8:20, several hours after sunrise, with Lightoller in command. Titanic's survivors were brought to their destination in New York, while friends and relatives in New York and Southampton anxiously waited for news about their loved ones after hearing about the sinking. 1,496 perished while 708 survived. Many people suffered injuries during the disaster. Harold Bride had to be carried off the Carpathia due to his injured, frostbitten feet which he sustained while clinging to overturned collapsible lifeboat B. Despite his injuries, he helped Carpathia's wireless operator send out personal messages on behalf of the survivors. Several posters were made to publicize the return voyage of Titanic before it sank. This one was marketed for third-class clientele. Tickets for the voyage had already been sold. Since Titanic's wreck was discovered in 1985, many artifacts have been recovered from the ocean floor. Among those were these floor tiles from the grand staircase. A piece of Titanic's hull weighing about 15 tons was also brought to the surface during a 1998 expedition. A large section of this piece was used for metallurgical studies to determine if Titanic's hull steel or the rivets that joined them were poorly made. The piece is now on display in Las Vegas, Nevada. There are many more stories to tell about Titanic. If you like this content, please subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching.